This is Anthony Morganti. Welcome to my podcast, For the Joy of Photography. This is Anthony Morganti. Welcome to episode 17 of the For the Joy of Photography podcast. And I've been beginning to regret titling this podcast For the Joy of Photography because it's very difficult for me to say, welcome to the For the Joy of Photography podcast. It just doesn't roll off my tongue very well. I should have just called it The Joy of Photography, but I digress. I will do my best to say this properly from now on. Welcome to the For the Joy of Photography podcast. In this episode, I want to talk about copyright and why it's really important that you guard your copyright at all costs, and how some companies nefariously steal your copyright. And I'm talking about this subject this week because of something that came out about Kodaks. Now, I never even heard of Kodaks till I read what they were doing to photographers and stealing their copyright. But for those of you that don't know, Kodaks claims to be connecting photographers all around the world to jobs with global companies. And by the way, in the video version of the podcast, I'm again showing some web pages. And those of you that are listening, in the show notes, I'll have links to everything I'm talking about. So that you could go see what it is that I'm referring to. Anyway, Kodaks connects photographers all around the world to jobs with global companies. It's easy to accept jobs when you want, and our team of community managers are always there to support the photographers in our community. And it's super easy. You just sign up, you schedule, when you're available, what gigs you'd like to do, and they hook you up. So basically, they're a broker. They'll find business for you and hook you up with business, and they take 10%, I believe, is what I read. So if you set your own pricing, so that's good. So specific type of job you're interested in doing, and you'll do it for $100. Well, they'll charge $110, and they keep the $10, and they handle all the billing, and all payments go through them. So you'll get your $100. So it sounds great. You kind of have an agent and a manager and a broker all wrapped up in one here to get you work. Well, it came out that in their terms of service that you sign up for, you're giving up pretty much everything. And DIYphotography.net wrote about it, and it says, let me just read this to you. Kodaks Terms screw over 4,000 photographers by stripping them of copyright to their own work. In early 2017, Kodak introduced its on-demand photography service, Kodaks. While it may have sounded like a good idea, it turns out that the service is not on photographers' side at all. All participating photographers are asked to give up all copyrights to the photos they take. The photo assignment agency also requires them to give up the moral rights and assume all legal risks of their assignments. And as if that weren't enough, there's also the possibility that photographers might not get paid if clients don't like the photos. Kodaks is a Singapore-based company connecting photographers with potential clients in 92 cities in 37 countries. In a way, it's similar to Uber, and its functions are through an app. Since it was launched, it has worked with 3,000 to 4,000 photographers across the globe. PDN reports, that's Photo District News. But the rights-grabby terms of the company have apparently screwed over all of these photographers. First of all, the agreement strips every participating photographer of his or her copyright to the images they produce. And then it actually quotes the legal language that's in the contract. Well, obviously this is horrible. I mean, this is like you're getting a manager to manage your business, but they own everything. And this is probably more common in the record industry, maybe in the 60s and 70s, where artists and bands would sign record contracts, and the manager of the record label gets everything. I think that most notably happened to Creedence Clearwater Revival. They signed with this guy, and he basically owned the copyright on all the songs and took everything from them. And even when John Fogerty came out with solo albums, this guy had the audacity to sue John Fogerty to say that his sound was sounding too much like CCR, and and he was suing him for it. Like, basically, he was ripping off Creedence Clearwater Revival, which he owned the rights to. Of course, thankfully, he didn't get too far, as I recall, in court. I think he either lost or it got thrown out because, of course, John Fogerty sounds like John Fogerty, and it's, not much he could do about what he sounds like. It's who he is. But anyway, I digress. What I'm talking about here, as far as the photography thing, it's kind of the same thing. You're getting yourself a manager to take care of the business side of your dealings. It's going to get you work, going to handle all the billing, and going to take us 10% basically, which is fair. But on top of that, though, they're going to own all the copyrights to those images. So if you happen to be doing work for somebody and you take a very notable image, and that image then afterwards gets marketed and sold, you don't have any rights to it. Kodak keeps it. And that is just morally reprehensible, in my opinion. But the trouble is today, in today's world, we're so connected because of the internet, and it's a great thing, right? I mean, we have information at our fingertips, but often that information is misused. I mean, we have a lot of people that are publishing truths that aren't true, from anything from politics to science to whatever. And a lot of people don't have the ability to discern what's right, wrong, true, false. Now, I'm digressing slightly and getting off track a little bit, but my point is that because it's so easy now to connect to a service like Kodak, and it's so easy to see how it could benefit us, we don't really get into the meat and potatoes of their actually contract that we're signing and what we're giving up to be a participant in something like Kodak. So it's very important, in my opinion, that we as photographers don't just jump onto something. We really need to research it, because you cannot give up the rights of your images, period. Just don't do it unless you're getting paid a lot of money. For example, a while ago, 3 years ago, I was approached by I'll just say Fujifilm wanted to purchase images from me. And I forgot now how many. I think it was 20, but I don't remember for sure. And they offered, it was like $2,000 an image. And I was giving up everything though. They were going to keep the image forever. Now, quite honestly, there is no way I would have been able to sell those images multiple times and earn $2,000. So really, Fujifilm was being very fair with their offer, obviously. But to me, it wasn't morally correct for them to take the image forever. So I mentioned that they could have all the rights, the copyright and everything to the image for $10,000 an image. Of course, they laughed at me. And it didn't go any further than that. And I'd rather not sell an image and lose all my copyright unless I was really getting compensated for it. And even then, I probably, let's say, just for the sake of argument, they wanted to buy, I think it was 20, and they gave me 10,000 each. So they gave me a check for $200,000. Uh, yeah, sure, I would have cashed the check. I'm not an idiot. But with that said, there would have been a part of me that felt bad that I gave up my copyright. Now, obviously, not everyone's in the same situation I am. Maybe somebody's really has a family to feed and they need the money, and $2,000 in images is a godsend. But what I'm trying to express here is that it's important that we all set a limit. Like, don't give up the copyright unless you're offered, and then you come up with your own number. And a company like Kodaks that basically is making you sign everything over for peanuts. Because let's face it, let's say you're doing an event and you're charging $1,000, but then you're giving up all rights to those images. Just period. You cannot reuse those images ever. You can't sell them. They're not yours anymore. That's, to me, morally reprehensible. That, I think, goes against everything that we've ever practiced as professional photographers. Time Life magazines, National Geographic magazine, those photographers, they pay them considerable amounts of money to send them on assignment to take all these images. The only agreement is they get first rights to the images to print them. After that, and there may be some other, things too. Maybe in books, they have rights to put them in a book, or they have rights to use them in a documentary or something like that. But the photographer still retains the copyright, and he or she could sell that image over and over themselves. That's just the way, it's always worked from the early days of the Magnum Photo Agency with Henri Cartier-Bresson and all the others that formed that agency onward. So, again, I think you really need to be careful with your copyright and not be so frivolous when you go into these endeavors. Now, I've talked about in the past how there's websites like unsplash.com and pixabay.com where they're stock photo agencies where very, very talented photographers are uploading their images. And the agreement is that anyone could use the images royalty free. So instead of a company that might be coming out with some advertising brochure or something like that, going to a stock photo site and paying for images, they could go to unsplash.com or pixabay.com, and I'm sure there's others, and they could find the stock image they want. They could use it, and they do not have to credit the photographer. They do not have to tip the photographer. They don't have to do anything. Now, that to me is horrible, but that's the way it is. There's nothing that's ever going to change that anymore. And my point was, when I talked about this in the past, is that your individual images aren't really worth what they used to be. In the days of stock photography, an image was worth to me, the least amount of money I ever sold an image for was $62.50. And nowadays, they're not worth that. But what is valuable is you yourself. And that's why these photographers are allowing their images to be exploited by Unsplash and Pixabay, is because it helps them build their brand. It helps them sell them. In that way, then, if photo assignments come down the line, they could point to all the images that have been used of theirs through Unsplash, Pixabay, and others. And that helps them sell themselves as a photographer, an artist, whatever. So things have shifted. There's really been a seismic shift in the marketplace. Images aren't worth anything anymore, but the copyright is. It really is. It's maybe difficult to understand, but the image must always be yours, unless, again, I mentioned there's circumstances where you need the money, you need to sell it. of course, you have to do what you have to do. Now, someone had mentioned when I talked about Unsplash and Pixabay and places like that before, how do they make any money? Well, they license the images, meaning Unsplash has an agreement with Squarespace, which is, of course, a website host, Medium.com, which is like a blogging platform. If you're writing a blog on Medium.com and you need an image to go into your blog, it's integrated. Unsplash is integrated in Medium. So you could go to look at images and pick one that you want to use in your blog, and there it is for free. You don't even have to credit the photographer. Same thing with Squarespace. You're building a web page and you want some stock images on your web page, there they are. They're all there. And Squarespace and Medium pay Unsplash for the rights of their users to utilize images from Unsplash. And that's how they make their money. And of course, the photographer doesn't see a nickel or penny of it. But that's the way it is. And you really got to be careful, though, with your copyright. These photographers still own the copyrights of these images. So if they have an image on Unsplash and they want to sell it, which makes it kind of questionable whether or not they'll actually be able to sell an image that's on Unsplash, seeing as it's there for free, full resolution. But let's just say they have an image on Unsplash and it turns out to be super popular. They could pull it off Unsplash anytime they want because it's their image, and then they could turn around and sell it all they want. So they still retain the copyright. Now, one thing I want to talk about really quickly is, we mentioned this Kodaks, and there's other websites too. And probably the two most notable are Facebook and Instagram. And, there's a lot of debate about whether or not, does Facebook really own your images? And if you kind of really delve into the pages and pages and pages of the Facebook Terms of Service, you'll understand that although they don't technically take your image from you, what they do is they have the right to use your image anytime they want to use it. So it basically is their property. They're almost like co-owners, I think might be a better way to put it. So to quote from their terms of service, it says, for content that is covered by intellectual property rights like photos and videos, you specifically give us the following permission. Subject to your privacy and application settings, you grant us a non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free, worldwide license to use any IP, intellectual photo content, intellectual property content that you post on or in connection with Facebook. This IP, intellectual property license, ends when you delete your IP content on your account, unless your content has been shared with others and they have not deleted it. So if you upload an image, you're giving Facebook the right to non-exclusive right. So anyone could do this. They could transfer it. They could sub-license it. They could do it whatever they want basically with it. You're allowing them to do it. Now, if you delete the image, then they don't have the right to do it unless other people shared your image and they didn't delete it. So you upload an image and it gets shared 1,000 times or even gets shared once. You delete it, Facebook still has the rights to use it because someone else shared it. So you'd have to track down all those people that shared it and ask them to delete it. And that's when finally Facebook doesn't have a right to that image anymore. And Instagram is very similar. Instagram, strictly speaking, when someone uploads an image in Instagram, you're not forfeiting your copyright. You're just allowing them non-exclusive, fully paid, royalty-free, transferable sublicense to use the content all they want. And of course, Instagram is owned by Facebook. Now, one thing you should know, whenever you upload any image or video to Facebook or Instagram, and I'm sure a lot of other websites too, they strip the metadata right out of it. and I could prove it. This is an image, those of you that are watching, I have an image I'm showing that I just recently uploaded to Instagram. I was able to download it from Instagram, which actually is very difficult to do. I went into the source file of the web page, and I found the actual image in the source file, and I was able then to download the image from Instagram using the source file. So it's not easy for someone to download an image from Instagram, but it is very possible to do. And there's actually apps that will do this as well, from what I understand, although I didn't use one and I've never used one. So this is my own image. When I uploaded it to Instagram, I had all my copyright info in there. I had my address, my phone number in there, my website. I actually had a link in the copyright part of the metadata. I had a link to a web page on my website that explains my copyright and terms of use for any of my images. And I also had keywords. I usually don't put keywords, but I happen to have keywords on this image. And this downloaded image, now I uploaded it to Instagram last week. Last night, I think I downloaded it from Instagram. And if you look at the metadata for the image, you'll see that it has just the size and the dots per inch and the color, it's RGB image. Then if you look at the actual IPTC data, that is the IPTC data, is that it should be my name, my copyright, my address, the web pages, all that is gone, totally gone. Not there anymore. So all the keywords are gone, everything stripped out of it, totally stripped out of it. Now, the other image, let's get rid of this, see here if I could find it, is an image that I uploaded to Facebook. And the same thing, this image went up to Facebook, and it had all the IPTC data that I talked about before. I'm not sure if this one had keywords, but it had everything else that shows that this image is mine, and you're really not allowed to use it. And if you look at the data on this image, again, it shows that its dimensions, it shows it's 72 pixels per inch. It's an RGB. But then when you go to the actual IPTC data, it does have my name and a copyright notice. All the other stuff is stripped away. So Facebook will leave the copyright notice there, but everything else is gone. But you already signed over the rights to Facebook. And one thing I should note, a couple years ago, Facebook stripped everything out, even your copyright notice. But there was quite an uproar about this. And I think in response to it, they modified their terms of service to make it ironclad that they owned the rights, or they had rights to your images to use them any way they wanted to use them, but you still retain the copyright on the image. And they allowed that part of the IPTC data to remain on the image. So that just kind of proves that they don't have to be they have the ability to leave this data there. And they could pick and choose what stays and what goes. So it's just something you need to be aware of when you're sharing an image pretty much anywhere. I would best, even 500px, which I talk about all the time because I like it. I'm sure there's a situation in their terms of service somewhere, which I've never read, admittedly, that allows them to use your image. And you really have to be aware of this, more so than I even have ever been aware of it. So again, it's really we're victim of circumstance in that we need, especially professional photographers, they need to get their name out there. They need to get their brand out there. They need to show their portfolio. They need to have their images online somehow. If they just put them on their website, they won't have as much traffic to look at their images than they would if they put them on one of these other websites like 500px, Instagram, Facebook, and so on. And Instagram has become a necessary evil. Instagram is becoming really the kind of the marketing place where you market yourself as a photographer, and where brands and other entities that look for photographers are going to find photographers. They're going to Instagram. So Instagram's become a necessary evil. If you just kept everything on your own website, people could still steal the image, if they wanted to steal it. There's no plug-in for any type of website that is foolproof there's plugins that disable like right-clicking on an image so they can't download it. But still, people could still get the image. Like I did with the Instagram site. I just went into the source code of the page and found the image and was able to download it. And they'll be able to do that too. So there's no foolproof way that protects your image from being stolen. The trouble I have, though, is many times we're just giving the image away without even realizing it. I mean, all these Kodak photographers, was it 3,000 to 4,000 of them? I bet of the three, let's say there's 3,889 photographers on Kodak. I bet 3,880 of them didn't read the terms of service and didn't know that they were giving away their images, all rights to their images. I would not be surprised if it's that many. So that's what we have to be aware of. Someone's going to steal the image here and there. Your images are always going to get stolen. We've covered this in past podcasts. But what I think is really bad is when the corporations are stealing your images and using them. And really, it's very difficult thing to understand maybe, and a difficult thing to guard against. But it's something you should be aware of. And in future episodes of the podcast, I'm going to look in ways that we as photographers could protect our images and protect our copyright. What we could do. I have in the past talked about some things you could do, but I'm going to try to update this and talk about these websites that help you against photo theft, other things that might help us guard our copyright, make sure we're not giving the copyright away. So we'll talk about that in upcoming episodes of the For the Joy of Photography podcast. Thank you for watching my podcast, For the Joy of Photography. Remember, stop by my website, onlinephotographytraining.com. There you'll find all my latest videos and articles to help you improve your photography. That's it for now. I'll talk to you guys soon.